Hi, welcome to the first episode that's going to be published on my channel. I feel before the video starts, I should just kind of give anybody a warning because then the topics of this video is just like very broad and it can go in many directions. And some of them are like, drugs, addiction, death, just many things that might trigger some people. So I just want it to be like a warning. Also, religion and how you may feel. But in any way, I wouldn't want me or the person I'm interviewing wouldn't want it to be seen as disrespectful. And we just want to give well, I just want to give a warning to anybody that might be watching that this is going to be in the video. And if you don't like these things, you may not want to watch it. So that's all I have to say. I hope you enjoy the video. I hope you can learn something from these people now from this video and in the future of many videos that I soon will publish and get a new perspective on things like how I have through many of these interviews, which I love. So thank you for giving me your time and I hope you enjoy the video. Recording. Okay. I'm gonna take this chair.
Sure.
Do a small intro.
Okay.
This is I always forget which episode I'm on. I think this is the 5th episode of my recorded segments of whatever I want it to be. That's my title. And
Catchy.
I'm here with
John Hamilton.
John Hamilton. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Marcus. It's good to be here.
My first question is, who are you?
Who am I?
Yeah, like when people, like if somebody were one of your friends. Sorry, I don't know if you have friends.
Like no, I have no friends. I have no
friends. Someone would have asked, "Who is John Hamilton? What do you like? What are the hopes?"
Oh, what are my hopes?
Yeah, like what do you think people would like think you are or who you are?
Okay. Well, one of the things I hope for most is that people know that I'm empathetic, that I try to understand the thoughts and feelings of other people, because that is really critical to me, that I'm compassionate, try to be kind to other people whenever I can be. I try to put myself in the position of other people so that, like, if I get upset about something, rather than just like flying off the handle and screaming, I try and think, well, how is the other person going to receive my message? So let me think about that before I present my message. If they're the type of person who would only understand like somebody screaming at them, maybe that's where I need to go. But if it's somebody, like say it's a little kid, I'm not going to just start screaming at them, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to try and instruct them on what the problem was and talk to them about it. And I think probably working with students for so long has kind of hammered that into my head. Like there are a million different people, and everybody has a slightly different reaction to positive news and criticism. So think about how it's going to be received on the other end. Other things that I think about myself, I think I am a teacher, and by that I mean I think that doing it so long, it just sort of comes naturally to me. But I try not to be, I don't know that I'm not, but I try not to be just a lecturer. I try not to say, this is how things are and this is how they're done. And I try and talk to other people and find out how I can teach them what works best for them. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm an Upper West Sider, I'm a New York City born person. And if you don't mind being super honest and upfront, I also realize that I'm a white cis man. And one of the things that I think has helped me become a better person in the last, I don't know, it probably goes back 25 years, if not longer, is the fact that I've grown to be more and more aware of that and recognize the privilege that I have in this society. And it makes me want to be a better person for other people, regardless of who they are, but especially people who aren't white cis men who may need the assistance of a white cis man, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it. Because like with your like your level of, I guess, status,
Yeah, you
with
could call it that.
the certain advantages that you may have, you
Absolutely.
can use that to help
Absolutely. I want to
others.
recognize it, and if I can use it in a positive manner, I want
Mhm. You regarding the last 25 years or
to.
last 20 years, do you think you've always been like, the empathetic, considerate person you've always been?
I think it was there. I think that it's just developed more and more the older I get.
Hmm.
And it's weird because, inside my head, I still feel pretty much like I did when I was in high school and when I got married and then when I was 30 and then when I was 40. There's a continual feeling of I'm the same person, and at the same time I feel like I've evolved enormously during my life. Um, so I think it was there. I think my dad raised me in such a way, he in particular, to like think about who other people are. And you know it doesn't, like, my parents were very aware of like homeless people and wanting to help them, and as much as we could, like, give a guy $1 if he asks for change. um, so I think from their example, I didn't have this feeling of like, oh, they're dirty and disgusting, so I don't want to be near them. It was, well, they're down on their luck, and maybe they could benefit from a little bit of human kindness. And the older I've gotten, and the more times I've had that experience, the more I feel like, yeah, that's true. And people do need eye contact, and they do need, like, it used to be I would just like dig out a quarter and hand somebody a quarter and keep moving.
Hmm.
And after a while I realized, well, giving them a little bit of money or giving them a little bit of food is important. But you know what else is important? It's like stopping for a second and looking into their eyes and saying, I see you, and I recognize you as a fellow human being who needs compassion and support. And I'm sorry that this is all I can do with the limited amount of money and the limited amount of time I have right now. But I want you to understand that I see you and you're important. You know, I don't
So
know.
cool, Mr. Hamilton.
You totally sabotaged me with this. I don't know what I'm talking about, but
Sabotage in what way? What do
well,
you
because I
mean?
thought you were coming here for a guitar lesson.
Oh, what? No.
Yeah,
I mean,
I didn't know I was going to be interviewed.
oh, I
That's
should have
all.
told you that earlier, but I didn't.
It's all good.
Since we're in the guitar section,
Yes.
am I even in camera? I'm not even in
No,
camera.
you're not even in camera.
Anyways, um, I think it's been going good.
Yeah.
I think today for my lunch period, I went to gospel, and then there was somebody playing bass. So I feel like I might convert.
That's what I did. I'm a
Because
very happy bass player.
yeah, and then because then even the period before this, I found the kid that was playing the bass, and I was like, how do you do it? Like I started playing first in my church, and that's how
Hmm.
I learned it. He thought it was always pretty cool. So
Do you
and
have access to a bass?
I've been talking to my dad and thinking of like either getting a guitar or a bass. He's like, you gotta choose one. I
Got
was
it.
like, okay, I'll make
Yeah.
a decision.
Yeah.
So I might do the bass.
One thing I'll say about bass that's a very positive thing, aside from the fact I'm so happy that I play bass, because I really feel like I can kind of speak through the instrument, as hokey as that sounds, in a way that I never could with the guitar. I thought I was an adequate guitar player, but I couldn't really express myself through the guitar. I guess because I never felt like I had hit the level where I could just sort of say something to you through playing the instrument. And I feel like I can do that with bass. And I think it's because I'm so much more comfortable on the bass. But beyond all of that, when you play bass, you get way more gigs than you do as a guitar player, because there are a million more guitar players.
Yeah.
I say this over and over to people. If you have the opportunity to play bass, do it, because once one person sees you playing bass, somebody's going to call you up and say, hey, I saw you play bass with so and so. Do you think you could play bass with me? And before you know it, you're making money playing bass.
Hmm. Do you think have you ever like thought of or at least tried to like make a class specifically with bass or like
Well, it's funny because the beginning guitar class, which I think I started doing 15 years ago, something like that, was originally a beginning bass class.
really?
Yeah, we had like 6 or 8 electric basses, and um, yeah, and people would just learn how to play scales. At the time, I was not playing bass. Ironically, I was a guitar player who could find his way around on a bass neck, but I was not a bass player at that point.
Hmm.
Um, so we would just play through scales, and if somebody had a particular song that they really liked, we would try and figure out the bass line to it. It was that kind of thing. Um, I would love to do a bass guitar class at this point. I mean, I feel like, like I say, that's kind of become my real instrument at this point. Um, so I
I
think,
join it.
yeah, I bet.
I'm going to get my computer out
Okay.
because I have a segment where I ask people their opinions on quotes. So
Oh,
I'll get on my computer.
okay.
You can talk to the people.
Okay. Hello, people. It's me. Remember me? I was sitting over here a few minutes ago, and I guess I still am. And yeah, I'm killing time. That's a nice bag, by the way. I like that.
Mr. Blanc, anytime I speak to Mr. Blanc, he's like,
Hey, I like that bag.
you look
Yeah.
at you. You're so
Yeah.
you're so prepared. You're so put together. Look at even their bag. And I'd laugh.
Oh, you can hear that's Mr. Apostle yelling in the background for your audience.
The apostle's crazy.
Yes.
I had him sophomore year over the quarantine.
Ah, for which class?
Theory two.
Theory.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what always stuck with me, which was never theory. It was the fact that he'd come to your house with a turkey.
Huh?
He'd come to your house with a turkey.
Apostle would come to your house with a
Yeah,
turkey?
like he'd like say that he'd come to your house with a turkey.
He would promise that, and it would never happen.
Yeah, and like I'd be relishing the day that I hear a knock on my door and he's there with the turkey. But he never came.
I was going to say, don't hold your breath. It's not going to happen.
Okay. Do you want to read the quote, or I'll read it to you?
Uh,
Because a lot of people, they feel like they internalize it better when they read themselves.
I don't have a preference.
I want you to read it. It's the boldest one.
The culmination, that one? The culmination. Do you mind if I read it aloud, and then I'll
Yeah.
do
Or
that?
I don't. It's whatever you want.
I'm going to say it aloud, but just the bold part.
Yeah, just the
Okay,
bold
so the
line.
culmination of love is grief, and yet we love despite the inevitable. We open our hearts to it. To grieve deeply is to have loved fully. Open your heart to the world as you have opened it to me, and you will find every reason to keep living in it.
What do you think about that?
The very first thing that pops into my head, I have a classmate, a guy that I went to high school with, and I haven't seen him literally since we graduated high school, which was 1983. But we are friends on Facebook, and recently he posted that his wife had like stage 4 cancer, and I thought, oh God, this is going to be painful to watch over the next year or whatever. And within like 6 weeks, she had died, and I just thought, wow, how profound, what a loss. And he's been dealing with it publicly on Facebook, and I kind of admire him for it because he's not shying away. He's not like throwing the covers over his head and trying to just pretend the world isn't out there. He's showing photographs of her artwork, or he'll show a photograph of a DVD cover and say, we always wanted to watch this together, but we never got a chance to, so I'm going to watch it tonight. And he's overwhelmed with grief too. I mean, he talks about, like, I spent the day crying, and I understand that feeling, and I think it's a valuable, truthful quote. I've been around. I'm old enough to have been around a lot of people who had long marriages, 40, 50, 60 years of marriage, and eventually one member of the marriage gets sick, and they go through that, and the person that is left behind has a lot of grief to deal with. So I think that's a very valid quote. That being said, it's the kind of thing, like, if you never leave the house because you're afraid that you're going to fall down a flight of stairs, then there's a lot of experiences that you're never going to have because you're too afraid of that one thing that might happen. I mean, obviously, somebody dying is inevitable. Everybody dying is inevitable. But if you put the brakes on loving someone just because you're afraid that someday they may not be with you, or someday the marriage might fall apart, or the relationship might fall apart, you're cheating yourself out of what could be the best, whatever, week, month, 6 years, 60 years of your life. So I think it makes a good point.
Pretty cool. I feel like I was about to cry.
I've got tissues right here if you need them.
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
Okay.
I used to cry a lot, like over the smallest things. But I feel like now even sometimes I can't stop myself.
Hmm.
I don't mind it because sometimes I actually like crying.
I love crying. I
Like,
mean, I honestly do.
yeah.
I think that it's one of the best relief valves that we have, you know. Um, and sometimes I cry over, little things. Some little video I see online that's just really moving to me, like a professional athlete, greeting a sick kid, or something like that. I just think, well, they could have said, no, I'm not going to bother. I want to go home. I want to, but they took the time to go and see that kid and make them feel special, and that really hits me in the heart, um, or obviously if you see something that's really sad and you cry, I think I don't know, it helps me to feel like I'm kind of engaging in the emotion of that moment. I don't think there's anything wrong with crying.
Mhm. What was I gonna say? Oh, I like crying, but I think it just minus the fact that for me my head hurts and my nose gets very stuffy, and I look in the mirror and I'm like,
Yeah, you're a mess. Yeah.
yeah.
There's an author who I love named Kurt Vonnegut, who was very witty and brilliant. And one of his quotes was something along the lines of, um, it had to do with preferring laughing to crying because you achieve the same result, but laughing is there's a lot less to clean up after you've laughed instead of crying.
Who's that by?
Kurt, Kurt, and his last name is Vonnegut, which is Vonnegut.
I just emailed that to myself.
Yeah, his books can be a little weird,
Mm-hmm.
more than a little weird, but they're brilliant and very moving. He wrote a book called Cat's Cradle. It's a skinny little, not difficult to read novel, but the things that he says in it, the 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 underlying things, that they blow me away. They move me incredibly. And his most famous book is a book called Slaughterhouse Five. He served in the U.S. Army during World War II, and he was captured by the Nazis and taken to a town called Dresden, which was a beautiful, beautiful city in Germany. And he was held as a prisoner of war there. And this is true from his actual life. Um, the Americans firebombed Dresden one night, and Vonnegut and the other POWs were taken to an underground slaughterhouse where they would ordinarily be killing animals. But they were held down there to keep them safe from the bombs falling. Slaughterhouse 5 was the actual place. And when they came out of the slaughterhouse later, the entire city had just burned down to basically nothing.
Got leveled.
Yeah, it got leveled by fire. The bombs started falling, wooden structures started catching fire, and then wind fed the fire, and just everything burned down. And before he went down into the slaughterhouse, it had been one of the most beautiful cities he'd ever seen. And then he came out from the slaughterhouse and it was just leveled. And over the next, whatever it was, month, he and the other POWs had to walk around Dresden, picking up all the corpses and burying people and all this horrible stuff. And he had a lot of PTSD from this, but he turned it into this wild novel, Slaughterhouse Five, which is partially autobiographical and partly science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wild book.
That's pretty cool.
It's
Though.
really cool.
Like, I can't imagine that
No,
myself.
no.
Because even like how young I am, I think there's always like the thing of how younger people think they're always right, and they think they've known everything. It's like, yeah, that's why I think everything is so interesting. I feel like now, since I am so young, I feel like I haven't taken advantage of kind of just doing whatever I want, not in like being rebellious. But I
Right.
think I'm just like trying to explore and see what anything that might interest me. Because I think right now I feel like I really do like marine biology.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go into that, but there's always, which kind of sucks, is like what's stopping me is from thinking that if I'm going to have a, like, what's the word? career in it.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's what stops me from it.
Well, have you spoken to anybody in the field?
No, I've only spoken to one of my friends who is taking marine biology in their class, and they're like, if you want to do that, you have to find an apprentice, or you have to like find a job as being an apprentice.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's probably true. I would just, I mean, maybe you've done this already, but I would Google like internships in marine biology and see what comes up.
Because I'm thinking of for the summer working at an aquarium. I think that would be pretty cool. I've always wanted to work at the one by Coney Island.
It's funny you should mention that because I have a friend, Lori Reese, who has worked at the Coney Island Aquarium for some years. So if you remind me, send me an email or something, I'll try to make some kind of connection. I can't guarantee anything. It could well be that she'll say, oh, all the people I knew there aren't there
Yeah.
anymore or whatever. But it's also possible she'll say, oh, you know who he should talk to? Bob Smith. And she'll give me Bob Smith's email address and maybe we can make something happen. Okay. Yeah. Sorry about the coughing on the mic. And I just touched the mic. That probably made a lot of noise too.
I clean them when I get home.
Ah, good.
What's her name?
Lori. Reese, Reese.
Lori. Re what?
Reese.
Remind.
Yeah. I'll reach out to her and just tell her that I have a student and blah, blah, blah. And, like I say, she may say, I don't have any connections to anybody there right now. Or she might say, here's the guy to talk to. But beyond that, like I say, I would look up, internships in marine biology. And it could be that you'll get one thing or you could get 15 things. And you could just send feelers out, Hi, I'm Marcus. I live in New York City. I'm really interested in marine biology. I'm trying to line something up where I could, and you might get some hits.
For all I know, I could be like a marine biologist who plays bass on the weekends. That'd be pretty cool.
Bass tones are good at moving through water, so you could play music for the beluga whales.
I like whales. I think it started when I did a project, and I think I was like third grade, and that we'd always do this sing for science class where we'd have the shoe boxes, and we'd make like the ecosystems. I always did a water one, and there was one where I did the sperm whale and the giant squid.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I always like doing those. I think I like hands-on things, and just not sitting at a table.
Yeah.
But
well, yeah, and with marine biology, you would probably get out on the water a lot of the time, which could be really cool. I love being out on the water.
Really? Do you have a boat?
I don't have a boat. But when I was in high school, I had a friend whose mom and dad ran the New York Sailing School up at City Island in the Bronx. And every year for his birthday, and I think I did this twice, maybe 3 times, they would take one of the boats from the New York Sailing School, which was like a 40-foot sailboat. And we would sail up and down the Long Island Sound for a week.
For a week?
Yeah.
Doing what?
Just sailing around, stopping into little villages and going in for lunch, and then get back on the boat, sail some more, drop the anchor, sleep out on the water. It was really fun.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
I'm gonna look for more quotes.
Okay.
I have a plethora.
Ooh, plethora. Very nice.
AKA just one page.
I love the word plethora. I don't know why.
Yeah, I like plethora and culmination.
Culmination is really good.
Yeah. Every time I say it, like with a different accent. I don't know, because I think I said it to one of my friends once. They're like, I don't like this quote. I liked it because I thought it was funny. My friend Leasia. Yeah, and they're like, it's not your fault when something ends that's already past due. It's like moldy bread.
It's like what bread?
It's like moldy bread.
Moldy bread. That seems reasonable to me. I mean, it's not your fault when something what ends?
When something ends that was already past due.
Well, yeah. Sometimes people they beat a dead horse. You know that expression? Mm-hmm. They try and make something happen that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
They don't understand that. Yeah, the window of opportunity that you had to do whatever it is has passed, or the relationship, yeah, you really want it to work, but it's pretty clear that that person doesn't, or whatever. Those kinds of situations, they can they can you know do whatever they want to try and make whatever it is work. But if the other person or the other group or whatever doesn't want to be there for that, then it's not going to happen. And the moldy bread comment is good because the
Yeah.
mold's on the bread.
Because we were talking about it, I was really funny because it's like there's always an instance where I just want to take a little piece off the moldy bread because it's not moldy, and you always think there want to be something you can work with that little piece of bread. And
Yeah,
they're like, you know what? I think you try to save people too much. And I was like, really? It's like, yeah, because I don't think you realize that sometimes you could be trying so hard, but you're wasting on your energy on something. I was like, dang, I should, and I try to internalize that.
yeah. I mean, I don't think. I think it's just important to like rationally stop before you act and say, is there a real shot for whatever it is that I'm trying to get done here, that it actually is going to get done, that
Mm.
the other person is going to change, or is going to whatever. um, or you have to be realistic. I think that's the thing. Like, um, I think it was yesterday, this guy I know who has a blog um, posted a thing about a good friend of his who has been struggling with addiction for, I don't know, a decade, 2 decades. And he wrote out like a 6 or 8 page handwritten thing. He's clean at the moment. He's been clean for like 20 days.
Mhm.
But he wrote out this incredibly harrowing thing about, when I was 14, I first tried whatever it was, LSD. And then a week later, I tried this drug and that drug. And he was on fentanyl and eventually graduated to heroin. I mean, this guy was like taking the hardest core drugs that you can imagine. He talked about like robbing from his family and all these really treacherous things. And before I read it, the guy who has the blog had said, "This is a good friend of mine, and he started to GoFundMe to try and raise money for his treatment."
Mhm.
Now, before I started reading this whole long thing, I thought, "Oh God, if I can give $5 or $10 to this guy, I don't know him, but if he's an addict and he needs a little bit of financial help and encouragement, I would want to do that." But I have to say, and I don't want to like curse the guy or not believe in him, because I want to believe in him. But reading this thing about how he would get clean and then he would bump into a friend, and before he knew it, he was shooting up again, I started to feel like, well, is this guy a lost cause? And I don't want to feel that about him. He's probably in his 40s or 50s with a lot of life left in him if he can pull his life together. But and again, I've never met this guy in my life. I have no idea. I was just reading his account of
Yeah.
being a drug addict, but that's what I think of when you talk about that quote. Realistically, do I want to invest in this person I've never even met? I do want to invest in him. If I had,
Mhm.
$100,000 sitting around, I'd send him $100, certainly. But, reading this thing, I was like, boy, I hope he makes it. But I don't know. That sounds like he's so many times he's relapsed. So
Mhm.
I have my hope for him, but I don't know.
Good luck to that guy.
Yeah, seriously,
Yeah.
seriously. I mean, I'm so grateful for the fact. One thing you mentioned before, well, you asked me before about how I identify myself. One of the things that I'm particularly pleased about is I've never had any kind of. The only addiction I ever had was I started smoking cigarettes in high school. So for about 10 years, I smoked cigarettes, and there were times like I'd be sitting in a movie theater, kind of like, I wish this movie would end so I can get outside and have a cigarette because I really want a cigarette. I wasn't going through like withdrawal like a drug addict would, but I was uncomfortable and my mind was away from the movie. That's the worst like addiction to anything I've ever had. But one of the things that I'm so grateful about is the fact that I'm not addicted to anything, that I live a relatively easy life because I'm not constantly craving anything beyond what I have, which
Mhm.
is really, really fortunate to have
I don't know what
in life.
to say. Because most of the time, I think I feel like I should listen more because I know like half the time my this main thing for me was to be like a conversation, but I feel like most of the time I feel like I had to just listen and have my own output because a lot of the times I feel like I hear people, but it's like I don't really have like the exact like I didn't remember that one thing that like that was as that should have been as important.
Well, that's hard to do when you're in the midst of a conversation.
Yeah.
You're too busy figuring out your response to them. Sometimes you miss stuff. I mean, that happens to me a lot.
Hmm.
You know, I'll be making notes about what they're saying, and then I'm thinking like, wait, did I misspell that? Wait, what did they just say? And you get distracted. It's easy to get distracted in that situation.
Do you have any questions for me, Mr.
Do I
Hamilton?
have any questions for you?
Yeah. Like about this interview or just about who I am.
Well, tell me who you are. You asked me who I am.
Um, being completely honest, I feel like I don't know who I am
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like I can have a change. I feel like I'm gonna cry. I
It's
feel
okay
like
if you
I
do.
like I have a change of who I can be,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of like I don't like it. Like if I don't like how this Marcus is, I feel like I just delete it, even though there could have been like something positive about it, which kind of does suck. 'Cause I feel like that every time I might have like a like a good moment,
Yeah.
and then but the bad moment that I have with this new Marcus, like just completely drowns everything out, and I make myself like forget what I am. So like I could be everybody can know me as the nice kid who plays the flute with the crazy long hair, but like next day I could just be like I don't want to be who I want to be. I don't know.
I don't want to lump you in with everybody else because you're a special individual, but I have to tell you that I remember being like 14, 15, 16 years old. And I remember within my family, I was sort of thought of as the jokester, like the not serious one, the one who was always like cracking jokes at the dinner table and stuff like that. And I remember one day feeling like, that's not all of who I am.
Yeah.
I can be serious too. And I remember like flipping a switch, and all of a sudden I was like really sullen to my family. Like I wouldn't crack jokes anymore, and I was really short with people. And I remember feeling like, well, I don't really like the feeling of
Yeah,
that.
like that literally happened to me like I think like at least a few months ago. Like my mom was like, "You're not you anymore,"
Yeah.
and I was like, "Am I not me anymore?" And it was like, "Do I go back to being who I was like a few months ago, or do I just not care what she says?" And
You know what it is? I mean, speaking for myself,
mm-hmm.
I think that the age that you are, you're still settling in to who you are. The only reason that I think that I am sort of settled is because I've had so many years to kind of figure it out. And I recognize this as like a blessing from the universe. I just happen to be pretty happy with who I am. There are a lot of people who I think walk around tortured by who they are,
Mm-hmm.
that the chances they didn't take, or the relationships they had that they realize now, it was a terrible relationship, or it was really toxic, or whatever. um, and they're constantly, or something terrible happens to them, like if somebody goes through a really painful divorce, and then they feel like, why didn't I realize that that person was so bad for me? Well, how could you? When you first met them, they were perfect for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that your marriage fell apart, that's not your fault. It's the way that the universe happened to work out. I feel, and I don't use the term blessings. I mean, I do use the term blessings frequently because I feel like I have a lot of blessings. I don't think of it in terms of like there's a benevolent God looking down on me and saying, "Oh, I'm going to make everything work out for him." But I feel like for whatever reason, my universe has lined up pretty well, so that I've had a few problems here and there. I broke my back twice. I broke my ankle and had to get it surgically repaired. I've had some physical
Mm-hmm.
things, but I've never had, I mean, in a long time anyway, I've never had anything really horrible happen. And for the most part, I feel really blessed. Like I say, I found the instrument that I love to play, and I found a lot of people who want me to play it,
Mhm.
and I make money doing that, and I have a family that loves me, and all these things so I feel pretty settled and happy in my life. But I know that when I was anywhere from like probably 12 through some large portion of my 20s, I think I was kind of casting around like, who the hell am I? And what do I want out of life? And oh, she's cute, but she's weird. Do I want that? Or do I want the less cute, girl who's not so weird? And, all these, there's so many options,
Mhm.
and yeah, and that thing about like, who are you? And do you always want to be the one that everybody like, what do you think? Tell us a joke. Well, I don't want to always tell you a joke, and maybe I don't know how to say that to you. Um, so I just act on it, and then I feel bad because you think I'm mad at you or what. There's so much baggage to being a human being around your age, to be honest.
Mhm. Especially with the social media thing, because it's
Oh
like
yeah,
if somebody gets mad at you, they can just do whatever they want.
absolutely. I have to tell you, more and more, I'm getting off of social media.
Yeah.
I got on Facebook. I was a fairly early adopter of Facebook, and I loved it at first because again, I connected with people I hadn't seen since high school,
Mhm.
30 years, 40 years. Um, and then I got onto Instagram, and I like Instagram still because I can take funny or beautiful pictures and just post
I
them.
like your Instagram.
Oh,
I
thank
stalk it.
you.
I don't
Oh,
follow
thank
it
you.
though, because I don't know if I should be like if I should do
It's
that.
okay if you want to follow it.
Mhm.
I don't think I'm allowed to follow your account until you graduate, but
Mhm.
if you want to follow it, feel free. I just like to post things that make me laugh, things that make me smile, things that I find beautiful.
Mhm.
Um, I don't like, I would, the thing about Facebook that really turned me off was eventually I realized people were just going on there basically to like scream. Either they were going on to say, happy birthday to my
Yeah.
son,
Yeah.
and post a picture, or else they were going on to say, these fucking Republicans, blah, 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 these fucking Democrats. And at a certain point, I just felt like you're just sitting there going like this.
Is that you do? Is that what you do all day?
Yeah. Why would you want to just spew all this hatred into your computer keyboard and hit send
Mhm.
and then wait around for people to read it and do the same thing to you? I just felt like it's like screaming into a bag and then tying up the bag and handing it to somebody and going away. And then they open the bag and they go, oh, you son of a bitch. And then they scream into the bag and they tie it up and hand it back. What the hell is the point of that?
Mhm.
So I go on Facebook for about 5 minutes every day to see if anybody's like tagged me in a photo, or if there's a show that I want to see that's coming up, and then I get the hell off of it.
Mhm.
And Twitter, I've been on Twitter for like 3 years, and I've enjoyed it because a lot of the time it's just been people that I follow that I like and agree with, basically,
Mhm.
or funny like animal videos,
Yeah.
and I've loved that. But since Musk took it over recently, or Scum as I like to call him,
That
SKUM,
whole thing is like I don't even get it. I don't even want to like put myself into it, but I feel like I
yeah,
should to be aware of it. But I just it's kind of crazy with like
I think I'm just going to be leaving it soon. It's
yeah.
just become too much of a mess. So I think I'll just pretty much be sticking with Instagram. And again, it's just me putting out something that I like to the universe. And if
Mhm.
people like it back, that's great. And if people want to ignore it, that's fine too. You know. But I agree. I think that people use social media as this way to like just belittle other people, make them feel bad a lot of the time. I know there are also people who are saying, oh, I'm so sorry you're depressed and I love you and that kind of thing. But it's no substitute for people being in the same room and looking each other in the eye and expressing themselves.
Cause also like I don't like texting people
Yeah,
like some because I feel like even though I know some people like aren't comfortable with talking like straight face to face, I feel like it just I'm able to actually convey myself more because with text everybody says I don't know like literally just an okay could mean so many different things
absolutely.
and it's like and then you have to think of oh my gosh I wonder how they're gonna take this okay
Yep, yep.
so it's like it's so difficult.
It takes me a really long time to write emails sometimes.
Yeah, because I feel like when I read emails or texts, I just think everything is always just so hi. It's hi. It's Marcus from third period.
Yeah.
That's why sometimes I like to add like maybe an exclamation point. if I can.
Yeah.
Then there's always just the thing of like you have to be professional when you're emailing people.
Yeah.
But it's like, so yeah.
There are times I'll write an email and like read and reread and reread, and instead of writing "can you," I'll change it to like "would you," because I feel like "can you" sounds too demanding, and
Yeah.
"could you" is a little bit more like "would you mind," and
It's yeah.
at a certain point, it's like, if I just picked up the fucking phone, I could have been done with this 25 minutes ago.
Mhm. Darn technology.
Yeah.
Any more questions you think you have?
Um, how do you feel about playing the flute?
Um, I'm gonna be completely honest. I sort of hate it. Like with what? I don't think I hate the instrument. I think I just
Yeah.
hate what I'm doing with the
Yeah.
instrument. That I'm like stuck in classical. Like I like classical,
Yeah.
but there's like so many of these other times, and of course with flute, there's like if I want to do jazz, they're like you can't really use that much, and they're like, do you know play saxophone? And I'm like, no. And they're like, I don't know, I can't help you there.
There's a jazz flautist named Herbie Mann. If you
Mm.
listen to some of his stuff, he might give you some ideas.
I've been listening to James Moody from time to
I
time.
know of him. I don't think I've heard his stuff.
I just like they just showed up on my YouTube one time. I was like, ooh, clicked it. But yeah.
Well, the other thing to bear in mind is I know that like the guitar is a great blues instrument because you can bend the strings and that kind of thing, and it has a long tradition as a blues instrument.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the greatest musicians are people who, or most creative musicians, are people who've taken some unusual instrument like the flute and have put it in a new context, you know, um, or have returned it to the original context. Like there's a banjo player named Rhiannon Giddens, I think is her name, and she goes back to the really really early roots of the banjo when it was mainly an instrument of enslaved people,
Mm.
um, and kind of turns it into more of an ethnic instrument than like the hillbilly banjo
Mm-hmm.
that we're used to hearing.
Yeah.
Or there's a guy named Bela Fleck and he's a graduate of LaGuardia. He plays the banjo, or he went to music and art, I guess, but he plays the banjo, and he's traveled around the world and seen how he can kind of fuse it with instruments from all over the world. So, maybe I understand what you're saying about the classical flute thing. If that's not exactly, you probably were kind of shoehorned into that when you came into the school, right?
Yeah, just even like learning flute in general is just always like classical.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wanted to stick with the flute, you could maybe see if there's a way to kind of repurpose it.
Yeah. I might have it as like, just like it might not be my main thing anymore.
Right,
I think it'll just be like I can also play the flute.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. Like, I mean, Lizzo at this point, I mean, she's the first flautist that pops into my head when you say that, but
Mm.
her main thing is not the flute necessarily, but she brings it into her act, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you could kind of have it in your back pocket that it's something else I do.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's good you've learned a lot of music through the flute.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can take that musical knowledge and apply it to bass and guitar. You know.
Yeah. I'm still like so like way off the track with guitar and all that because like it's crazy. I need to watch more videos to be honest.
Watch more videos, listen to more music too.
Yeah.
Find a guitar player that you like where you're not like bowled over by the technique. Because sometimes you hear a guitarist and you go, oh my God, I can never play like that because they're playing a zillion notes per second. But if you find somebody who's just like playing a normal, not normal, but like a medium tempo that just is playing something really pretty, maybe you can start to kind of comp what they're doing. You can kind of figure out, oh, okay, they're playing this chord and then they're moving that finger there and that makes a new chord, you know. The other thing too is as much as you can try and play with other people because you can learn a lot off of sitting across from somebody. They go, oh, have you ever tried doing this? And you're like, what? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's kind of cool,
Yeah.
and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I learn a lot of stuff just by watching other people. Uh, I remember I went to see this band one time, and I was just watching what they were playing just a blues, which I've played blues a million times, but I was watching what the guitar player was doing. He was doing something I'd never seen, and I could hear what he was doing. And I was like, okay, so he's third fret, fourth fret, but what is he? So when I got home, I grabbed the guitar, and he was like third. I'm going. He went there and there. No, that doesn't sound right. Oh, he went there. Oh, and I figured out just by kind of piecing it together that way. But you're in one of the biggest
Yeah, there's so many
music
like
communities that you can be in.
yeah.
Try and make connections while you can, while you're here.
Last question. Oh, give me a second.
Our interviewer is stretching at the moment, in case you can't see that.
This thing has no backrest.
Yeah, mine doesn't either, but you don't hear me whining.
You fixed your back multiple times.
Yeah, that's true.
You have advancements. Um, how do you see me? Like from the experiences, or just like how I've acted from there to now.
You're somebody that has always struck me as just having a really sweet, open, friendly nature. I mean, that's one of the things that drew me to you in our class was I just felt like here's somebody I can converse with easily,
Yeah, because a lot of times, like, I didn't know things. I'd be like, what is that? I'd be like, no, and I just want an answer. I do it a lot in a lot of classes because every teacher's like, can you guys say if you don't know something? I'm like, I don't know this.
And believe me, as a teacher, that's appreciated. I would much prefer to have somebody say, wait, say that again. That didn't make any sense, rather than for them to sit there quietly going, I have no idea what the guy just said, but I don't want to raise that issue. I like to have conversations in my class as much as I can. I know there's a certain amount of me having to stand up there and define stuff and give written out definitions. But I would prefer, like, if I had my druthers, I would have a class of 8 people and we'd sit across from each other like this, and I'd say, here's a piece of music, what do you guys think? And the class would talk about it, just giving their opinions and their observations. One of the things that I liked about you early on was I felt like you did that in my class. And I just felt like we immediately kind of bonded in a friendly kind of manner.
Hi, Mr. Hamilton.
Yeah, and it just made me really feel good when I would see you in the hallways and stuff, because I felt like you weren't just some student saying hi because you wanted me to kind of notice you and maybe you'd get a good grade. I felt like there was a genuine, like, just friendliness and interaction, So that's one of the primary things that I see about you. From this interview, I'd say that you've got deeper levels that maybe I've never been aware of, because we haven't sat down like this before, and I can appreciate them a lot. I feel like, again, from the interview, I never knew this before, but I feel like you're sort of in a process of evolving, and like a lot of adolescents who don't necessarily talk about it, you've got a lot going on in there that you're trying to process. And I think a conversation like this is helpful for both of us, because I feel like I'm going to walk away with a deeper level of who you are, and you will have opened up a little bit about all that stuff that you're sorting through in your life and in your mind, and maybe kind of putting it out on the table to another person and having them hear you and kind of interact with you about it will make you feel a little bit more like, yeah, I want to talk to him more about it, or I want to talk to other people about it more, and just let people know who I really am. It's hard. I mean, I'm sure that if I sat down with a lot of students this way, there could be some really interesting breakthroughs and I was going to say innovations, but that's not what I meant. Breakthroughs and just better awareness of one another. But in a school this big, who has an opportunity to do that most of the time? This conversation would probably never be happening if you didn't sabotage me with this interview.
Yeah, like, even I feel like it wasn't even what I wanted to do. It wasn't even like an interview thing. I just wanted it to be like a fun way of making conversation with people. It's like the microphone's like, you have a microphone. Whoa, isn't that so cool? And so I feel like, because a lot of people ask me, why are you doing it? And I was like, because I feel like I know people, but I don't really know them.
Yeah. Well, are you familiar? For a while, it was a huge thing, and now I don't hear about it anymore. Humans of New York.
Mm-mm. What is
Okay,
that?
like 10 years ago, there was this guy who would just walk around the city with a camera and he would take somebody's picture. And he, for a while, he posted it a lot on Facebook. So you'd be scrolling through your feed and you'd see a picture of some, like 80-year-old woman wearing a funny hat. And you'd be like, oh, that's a cute picture. But then there would be an interview with her and she'd, I don't know, be talking about her late husband, or she'd be talking about her son who was killed in Vietnam, and it was just like mind blowing because you would see the picture and it would be a very superficial thing, but then you would start to read the story. And I mean, he got some incredible stories. There were some where it had to be broken down into like 6 different parts because it was just page after page of this person's personal story. You should look it up. There's some, and he even did a book. But yeah, like I say, ordinarily walking around the school, you just go, oh, there's the guy with the funny hat,
Yeah,
or
like
there's the person with the Slayer T-shirt.
yeah,
But
because most of like my interaction would just be like, "Hey,"
yeah,
and then
right, because we're all on our
class.
way to someplace else.
Yeah, and I felt like that people just never had a chance to like be seen as like, I want to talk to you.
Right.
And half the time, like nobody ever really catches up. I feel like, and then it's just the if you guys don't talk, I guess nobody's gonna talk. So it's like,
Yeah.
and then one of you has to make the decision to feel like if they want to just catch up again.
Yeah. Right.
So, yeah. What was the thing? Can you write it down? That Humans
Oh,
of New York.
Humans of New York. Yeah. It was called Honey, Hony. And a couple of times he was around here. Like he took pictures of a lot of LaGuardia students over at Lincoln Center, and they turned up on his website. Humans of, I almost wrote Humans of LaGuardia. There was also an Instagram page called Humans of LaGuardia, um, on which I was featured once. I never made it into Humans of New York though. And if you're ever by Barnes and Noble, if you pop in there, you can see the book.
Really?
Um,
So he made a book?
yeah, it's got to be like an inch and a half thick, and it's photographs and the interviews with people. And sometimes, what the heck? Sometimes it's just really silly. There will be a picture of a person with a funny dog, and it'll be like, oh, I bought him when he was 6 weeks old, and he wakes me up every morning, blah blah blah. And it's just a silly story. But then there are other times, like I say, where you look at the picture and you think, oh, that's a nice picture, but then when you read the story, you're like, oh my god,
Yeah,
wow, what this person went through, you know. And it could be really mind-boggling when you saw that kind of thing.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, oh, wait. Is that all you had to say about me? Or how you perceive me?
Um, I think. I mean, that's those are the things that come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Open, friendly, um, and it. I think the other thing that I would say is sometimes I go through an entire semester with students, even if they're friendly and nice. I don't ever feel like there's a real connection. Like there's a real. Um, they come into the room. I say hi, Joe, or whoever.
Just like
You
such a
remember
placeholder
Joe.
name.
um, Hi, Mr. Hamilton, and they sit down and they take their notes and they pass their tests, but I don't ever feel like I'm never, yeah. Once they graduate, somebody will say, hey, remember that kid, Joe? Joe, nah. He sat in the front row, played clarinet. Oh, yeah, I think, but, but then there are other students where I feel like there's somebody that I'm going to be seeing again. That's somebody that I'm going to be talking to.
Yeah, I
That's somebody,
wanted to do that because like
yeah,
even me like emailing over the summer, like really
yeah,
just about guitar, and I was like, oh, I know Mr. Hamilton. I'll ask him about guitar.
exactly. And in all honesty, it always I was happy to get those emails. Sometimes you get emails from students and they're like, oh, can you help me pick out a guitar? And it's like, yeah, I guess I can. Here are some links, follow those. That'll help you. But um, I think part of it was that you asked detailed questions. You weren't just like, what should I do next? Well,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, because I think what was it? I think my guitar was broken. I was like, should I?
Right.
What isn't it like the high E string? And what do I know how to replace that with?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you were asking specific questions. It was more of a two-way communication. So yeah, I think the other point that I would make is that early on, I felt like we kind of understood each other and we had a good time when we saw each other. Plus the fact that we proved that when we would like see each other in the hallways, you know,
Yeah.
we did our hugs before and after class sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that. I loved that, you know. And it's not something that I ever feel comfortable going to a student about because I don't want them to feel like, oh, he's that creepy guy
Who's
who
this
wants
man
to hug
hugging
me,
me?
you know. But I remember you offering one time, and I was like, I'd love a hug. I love hugs. I mean, who wouldn't love hugs, right? Um, but yeah, that kind of opened a door for me. Like, oh, here's somebody who wants to interact in that way. That sort of like, I don't know, forging a real connection, you know. So that's who I see Marcus as, and I'm sure there are many layers to the onion beyond that, but that's as who I see you as at the moment.
I always thought it was funny because like when I did hug you, they'd be like, "What are you doing, man?" I was like,
Yeah,
"Hugging
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a mutually agreed upon hug.
Mr.
Nobody's feeling weird about it. And at the same time, like I say, if there are students who are like, I would never do, okay, no, I don't want you to hug me if you would never do it, you know? But if two people say, sounds good, let's do it, why the hell not, you know?
Before we end this, do you have anything else you want to say?
Anything else I want to say?
Yeah.
Are you being a robot? What?
Yeah, because people haven't seen me on the camera.
Oh, yeah,
Always
that's
just been
Marcus.
this.
That's Marcus.
Now it's
Yeah. Um,
like a favorite quote or a favorite saying.
there was something oh, what was the thing I posted? It was for it was a Kurt Vonnegut quote the other day,
Mm.
um, but I can't remember which one I posted. Oh, this is terrible. Um, yeah, I can't remember
You
what
can
it was.
check it if you want. Maybe.
I forget it. I don't think I posted it on Instagram. I think I posted it
Oh.
on Facebook, and I don't have that on my phone because
The notifications.
I don't want it. I don't want it on my phone.
Mm.
But yeah, I guess I can look at my feed and see if I have anything on there. Um, oh, yes, I do. I do have it.
Nice.
Yeah, good going. So in on November 11th. Oh, so it was Veterans Day.
Mm-hmm.
Kurt Vonnegut's birthday is Veterans Day, and his quote, and this is from one of his books: "If I should ever die, God forbid," which I think is hilarious to begin with, because of course everybody is going to die. But whenever you're talking about somebody dying, you have to say, "God forbid." You know, if you die, Marcus, God forbid. At some point you're going to die. I don't want it to be any time in the next 900 years, but some. So he wrote, "If I should ever die, God forbid, let this be my epitaph. The only proof he needed for the existence of God was music." And I love that quote because first of all, I love Vonnegut so much, and I love the voice that he brings to his writing. But I'm an avowed atheist. I don't believe that there's a God.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that there might be some mathematical formula that guides the planets and moves things around, but I cannot believe that there's some being that's looking at me and saying like, I want to control what happens to
Yeah, and
him.
like I told it to my dad. I was like, "Do you really think there's a God?" Because it's like the fact that people can believe in something that they've never seen before, and then just because like the whole story that's been told to people, it's all of a sudden believable. Like it makes me think like, who says I can? Because like people have literally done it. Who says I can just make my own God?
Right.
And then people just literally just start to believe in the God that I've made.
Right. Right. I mean, if you look at not to put anybody's
Yeah.
religion down, but the Mormon Church was founded by this guy Joseph Smith in the 19th century, and he just basically sort of made up a bunch of stuff.
Wasn't he the guy who did the massacre in like was it Brazil? Or is that somebody else?
I don't know about Brazil.
Or was it like no, it wasn't Ecuador. It was somewhere like some Caribbean or coastal place. And like he had a church and this I think
Oh no, you're thinking of Jim Jones.
Yes, that guy. I did a project on him.
Guyana. which is, I want to say, in the Caribbean. Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I believe Guyana. He established the People's Temple and moved it to Guyana,
And then he just had this whole.
and it became a cult, and he became the god of the cult, and eventually he told everybody to murder themselves.
Yeah, that's just an example. It's really like anybody can just do what they want.
Yeah. I remember as a kid, I would read about people, talking to God or hearing from God, and I would sit there and be really quiet, thinking, okay, God, if you're up there and you want me to know about you, give me some kind of something. And I never heard anything. And and again, this is just my personal view. I don't want to put down anybody for believing what they believe, but I never felt any belief system. Um, and the other thing too is, I think with all the suffering that goes on in the world, it's hard to imagine for me that there's some kind of greater being who's allowing a 7-year-old girl to get raped, or a 92-year-old woman to be beaten to death, or a 10-year-old to get cancer and die. What would be the point of all of those things?
Yeah.
If you were in control, would you allow that to happen? And if the answer is yes, you would allow it to happen, then I don't want to believe in you, and I'm not going to worship you. And if the answer is no, there isn't a being who can control that, then that's our answer. I forget where I was going with this. The Kurt Vonnegut quote. The thing that I like about it is, he says, if you want to believe that there is a God, for me, the only proof is that there's music. Because to me, one of the most beautiful expressions of humanity is music. Not the music that we're hearing outside right now necessarily, but there are moments in music that just, I think to myself, how could just a human mind think that up?
Yeah.
So maybe there is something greater to it. But yeah.
Very cool, guys. As you heard it from here, the one and only John Hamilton. Yeah. How long are we going for? An hour? You're my first. Wait, no, are
Good
you?
Lord.
You're like, most people are like 40 minutes. You're the first hour.
All right. I knew we could do it.
So easy. We're just.
It didn't
better.
feel like an hour.
It did not. Like, because I looked at the clock and I was like, oh, it's already almost in the 9th period. That's why I like doing this, because I feel like, I don't know if I should end it, but I like doing it because I feel like it's just like I can get lost in the sauce.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't really care. Like, I'll go home and I'll be like, I don't care that I got home at 5 o'clock because I had a cool conversation with somebody that I know.
That's true. And we did something that we wouldn't ordinarily do. I mean, that's what we were saying a minute ago. This kind of made us stop and interact.
It's like, this is Mr. Hamilton.
And Marcus. Yeah. Marcus Enriquez.
Marcus Enriquez.
MH.
I was thinking, I don't think I ever, there was a time when I didn't want to have my name. Because I'm like, I never knew what I wanted to name myself. Like, because my mom was like, you were supposed to be Marcos. And I was like, but your dad wanted to be Marcus because his name was Marcus.
Oh.
And I was like, oh. And it was like, I was like, what about Michelangelo? But I was like, I'll stay with Marcus.
The problem with Michelangelo is everybody would make jokes about the Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
Right?
Or the artist.
Yeah, I mean, if it were just the artist, that would be great. But
you're like the turtle.
Exactly. I mean, John Hamilton is a pretty boring name.
I like Hamilton.
Hamilton's a cool name, but John is like the most run-of-the-mill name. There are 80 million people named John, and there are 40 million named John Hamilton. Mm-hmm. So it's a very common name. I don't really care. It's an okay name. And, my friends will call me Johnny or whatever. But, yeah, there were times where I felt like, couldn't I have had a more interesting name?
Yeah. And it's like, because there's this one person in my class. I think their name is, dang it. Their name is like, I don't remember, but it's like really cool. I think it's like Drinique. I was like, I
know Drinique. Yeah.
They have glasses and like their hair is blonde.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, why can't I have a name like that?
Yeah.
So cool.
I don't know. I think Marcus is cool. It's got the whole Roman centurion thing going for it. Like Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
The only thing I can know is Marcus from the creator of the Rainbow Fish. Because
See, that I have no connection to.
when I was like in the middle school and I read Rainbow Fish, and they're like by Marcus, whoever his name, by Marcus, whoever his name. I was like, that's me.
I'm Marcus.
And like I mean, the joke is like, I wrote the Rainbow Fish.
Right.
And if you're like, you did, and I was like, no.
But the guy who did
we do have the
shares
same
name.
name.
Yeah. It's distinctive. I don't know a lot of Marcuses.
A lot of the Marcuses are like not right away. I feel like. So it's kind of a different thing. I don't know. That's me though.
What, do you have a middle name?
Funny thing. You know how my name was supposed to be Marcos?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be Marcos Antonio. Well, it is Antonio. My dad's name is Marcus Anthony Enriquez. So I'm really like, if anything, if it was actually worked out, I was supposed to be just like the Spanish version.
Right.
And so it's kind of, I think that's funny. They're like, then what's your dad's middle name? Oh, Anthony. Yeah, and I'm Antonio.
Right. That could have been, yeah, that's a little confusing.
Yeah, even like some of my family functions. That's why like I have a nickname. People call me Pop or Marquito. And I think Marquito means like little boy.
Yeah.
So I was like,
or little Mark.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I stuck with Pop a lot of times. People don't call me Pop because I feel like they're probably just more comfortable with calling me Marcus. Because I'm never like, you can call me Pop. I'll be like, it doesn't sit right if you're not like my mom.
Right.
Like my sister.
Right. Yeah, that's a little weird.
So that's why I don't tell people.
Right.
But it's like I have the feeling of like, people call me Pop sometimes. I tell them it's up to them if they want to call me Pop. Yeah.
Well, the other thing you can do is, you're young enough that as you meet people, you can tell them what to call you. Mm-hmm. So you could, I don't know.
You can call me Marcus. You can call me Pop. You can call me Marquito.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or come up with something brand new.
Marpapo.
For instance. Don't know why you would, but okay.
Yeah. That's it, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to shove off. I got to hit Trader Joe's and get some coffee.
One of my friends has never been to Trader Joe's, and I was like, no way. It's so great.
It is great.
The frozen pizzas.
Yeah.
There's this one frozen pizza that I love, and it's like pepper, sausages, and pepperoni.
That sounds real good.
Okay.
On my Instagram page, you've probably seen some of my homemade.
I think I have. Yeah.
They're good too.
Okay, guys, we're going to end it. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye, viewers. Bye.
Bye, everybody.